Tiwanaku is named after the principal site on the shores of Lake Titicaca. And the Tiwanaku would spread from southern Peru as far as Chile. It also became an important ceremonial center where we see these massive structures that tend to turn up on ancient aliens with crazy-haired people standing in front of them saying, wow, these were clearly cut by lasers, because, abrasion definitely couldn't do that. But it could, but let's leave the obvious aside. And let's focus instead on the Gateway of the Sun. Now, this is a massive megalithic structure, and we don't tend to think of megalithic structures existing outside of Western Europe, but of course, they are common in many other parts of the world. It was moved from its original location in ancient times. And looking at the piece itself, the central figure is a staff god in relief. Now, these staff gods are quite common amongst the tribal groups of the Andes. And here we see the god holding two staffs that appear to take on a different form. If we break it down and use more of a two-dimensional rendition to understand the form, you'll see that what he's holding is really two staffs in the form of birds, and ceremonial birds, very important birds. And we see also hierarchy of scale. The larger forms are, of course, going to be the most important. And so we see this staff god in the center. We know he's particularly important, whereas the figures to the side seem to be priests or other figures who are important, but not nearly to the level of our staff god. And let's tear our staff god apart a little bit. We have these what appear to be bird staffs. He's wearing what appear to be skulls or heads on a skirt or kilt. We have jaguar heads on either side of that. His necklace pennant actually has, you see these three forms here, very reminiscent of the aorta of the human heart. So this could be symbolism that's coming down through trade from Mesoamerica. This could also be a representation of sacrifice taking place. We have a number of different forms in here, many of them jaguar or puma forms, which would be very common in the area. We have rays from his head that actually end in jaguar heads as well. Smaller figures around him appear to be winged, and they appear to have either human, as we see here, or condor faces here. Now, why a condor? Well, in the highlands, the Andean highlands, you're going to see a lot of these condors soaring around. They're going to take on mystical qualities because they never really seem to come down, and they appear really without a great deal of predictability, at least to ancient man who may not entirely understand their comings and goings. Now, the entire piece, the gateway, was the doorway to a sacred platform beyond. So it would have looked something more like this, with a wall and everything running around it. It also would have at one time been painted. The eyes of the staff god were probably originally inlaid with turquoise and possibly gilded. The figure was possibly gilded. Inlaid with turquoise is really common. Turquoise would have been a major trade good that's coming from northern Mexico and the southeast or southwestern United States through Mesoamerica into the Andes. Again, that idea that trade and rarity makes something particularly precious, even if we don't see it as particularly precious today. The idea of painting stone sculpture is not unusual either. After all, almost every ancient civilization has painted their stone sculptures to be more lifelike and to make the different details and elements stand out. For an ancient society, this piece really does stand out, especially when you consider that it dates to 375 to 700 CE. So this piece is remarkable for its craftsmanship, for its workmanship.